Trying something new today. Is that vaguely in the right direction? You know what? Probably better. Okay, we're trying something new today. With the old video format, I have found that it is, how can we call it? Editing heavy, for lack of a better word. So I decided, let's try something different. Basically, all that I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna be talking about kind of whatever I want to kind of thing, and see where it goes. Put that back in there, magical. I need something to ramble about. And I'm gonna ramble about a whole bunch of random stuff that comes to my mind because I can. And this way it'll be, in theory, a little bit editing less heavy kind of thing. So it should be a little bit easier to make these videos. Oh, I need that. Plus, this gives me a chance to rant about whatever I'm thinking about at the time, which can be varied, let's be kind, but I also hope to make it a little bit interesting for you guys. It's gonna be my version of shower thoughts, for lack of a better word. But you know, shower thoughts ain't exactly gonna work on the YouTube and the YouTube format. So instead, this is gonna be cooking thoughts or kitchen thoughts, maybe. So I'm gonna be talking about whatever I want to talk about when I am cooking. And for today, for example, today I'm gonna be making chocolate chip cookies. With that in mind, what do I want to talk about today? Well, I recently just finished reading a book during a couple weeks I had off for Christmas kind of thing. And when I was reading this book, I was surprised that there is kind of a reference to an age-long debate that has always been on the internet kind of thing. Very old debate, and I find it kind of funny. Now, I'm not going to tell you which book it is, per se, because that's going to be for a future video, I'm thinking. Because this book is almost in and of itself a debate. It's almost in and of itself a debate. Words are silly. I have no idea what the sound in this area is gonna be. I expect it's gonna be mixed. Who knows? We'll see. I'm also Dutch and cheap and not gonna do anything about it. These are almost never put into cookie dough, but you know, whatever. Take your time. The butter was so cold. So, in the meantime, if you can hear me over the microwave, what was the debate that I'm thinking about? Well, the book that I was reading had dragons in it. And I didn't realize that this debate topic was even a debate to begin with. It just seems so strange and out there and just completely left field. As an example of what this debate is, if I give you a couple of examples of dragons, and if I tell you three movies, three depictions of dragons as it were, would you be able to find the commonalities between these movies? I'm thinking Harry Potter, specifically movie 4, that's Goblet of Fire, I think it's called. The one where they don't play Quidditch for the first time and everyone's peeved, and Fred and George, they try to toss their names into the goblet and turn into old guys. That. And then if I mention House of the Dragon and / or Game of Thrones, specifically the visual shows, not the books. And then the last one, I'm gonna say The Hobbit, specifically the second one. I think it's called The Desolation of Smaug. And therefore, because of that, I'm also thinking very specifically. Thank you. Correlate there. I forgot some of the butter wrapper. Oh well. For a certain portion of the internet, there's a debate on what exactly makes a dragon. And if you are aware of this debate, which I kind of hope that you're not, you may realize that all of these examples, according to the internet, and specifically the scaly portion of the internet, I don't suggest looking it up. The people in this debate are debating whether or not the dragons in these examples are actually dragons or not. I know, I never thought about that. To get us started, what is a dragon? What do we think of when we think of dragon? Now this, to me, I thought, is a pretty obvious question. Is that too much? Slightly. Tolerable. Kinda love how baking is just a very inaccurate form of chemistry. If you're off by a little bit, who cares? I have no idea if the framing of this is gonna work. This is gonna be another kind of, well, who cares, I'm Dutch kind of situation. What are kind of the qualifying factors for making a dragon? Now, I feel as if this should be a fairly obvious discussion, but apparently this is one of the main debate functions. When I think of a dragon, personally, I'm thinking it's probably pretty big, it's probably reptilian, ergo scales, it probably flies, and it probably can breathe fire. And who cares why it can breathe fire? Whoop-de-doo, right? For the people that are super into dragons, and for some reason this is a very large number of people, that's not the main deciding factor. Strange. One egg. Whee! Not gonna get salmonella! In any case, this debate on the internet hinges on the idea that there is actually another function besides those that I've just listed that really decides a dragon. And for certain dragon fans, let's call them, this is the most common mistake, I suppose, that ultimately decides whether or not it's an actual dragon in the media or not. That fourth factor is, well, let me show you. Tells you just how much of a nerd I am. Not only am I talking about dragons, but I'm getting my Dungeons and Dragons miniatures to show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is an acceptable form of dragon. Can you guess what exactly it is that makes it acceptable or not? If I point at these guys, is this gonna do it for you? Apparently the deciding factor is very specifically, does it have front legs or not? Apparently, if it has front legs, then it is an actual dragon. And if it doesn't have front legs, then it's not a dragon, it is instead a wyvern. And the book that I was reading was very specific in saying, no, dragons have 4 legs, wyverns only have 2! But this isn't unique to the author in this book. This is actually, really common. George R. R. Martin apparently got into an argument about whether or not dragons have 4 legs or 2 legs, and he was annoyed at the show for a little bit about having, the Targaryen emblem having only 2-legged dragons as opposed to 4. But I was amazed at just how prevalent this debate was, and it just seems to keep coming up. This is just one of those, internet fan debates that are just always out there, and I don't really get it. And to be clear, the side that's pro-dragon is super passionate about it. It's so strange. It's so prevalent that, I'm a history guy as well. I'm that kind of a nerd too. And one of the podcasts that I listen to is a podcast called Everything Else is History. They talk about whatever it is they want to talk about, but they had a sponsor segment for when season 2 of House of Dragon came out, and they were like, yeah, we're talking about dragons. And this debate topic came up, and I'm just like, guys, the dragons don't exist. Who cares? But people really care about this. A lot. And to be perfectly clear on my personal thoughts on this discussion, my personal thoughts is, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. I would like to describe why, as well as possible. But my first thought is, ultimately, if they're big, reptilian, and breathe fire anyway, does it really matter if one has 2 legs or 4 legs? From a narrative plot discussion, right? If you're reading a story and Smaug has 2 legs or 4 legs, does that actually matter? I would argue no. And I'm not the only one that thinks this way. You ever hear of a guy named Peter Jackson? Lord of the Rings feller? Arguably made one of the best trilogies in the world kind of thing. We don't have to talk about his more recent work, because that's more mixed, let's call it. When he was working on The Hobbit, and I actually don't mind The Hobbit, when it came to the design of Smaug, the big dragon, big, evil, extremely intelligent beast of a thing, he ran into the problem of, when they were designing Smaug, they just couldn't get the feel of it right kind of thing. And when they were kind of finally, after months and months of development, actually capable of getting Smaug into a design that they were kind of happy with, he quickly found a problem. If you want to have a dragon that can emote, then if it has 4 legs, like this guy does, as it turns out, it's a bit too dog-like. And this is a trick that's pretty common. It's pretty common for animals, in especially animation, tangle with the horse, right? Or actually a better example would be How to Train Your Dragon with Toothless, right? Those dragons all have 4 legs. And all of a sudden, they seem real pet-like, real dog-like all of a sudden. And as it turns out, if your goal is to make a really big, intimidating dragon, that doesn't jive very well. So, Peter Jackson, when he found that discovery, for lack of a better word, it's not really a discovery, but whatever. When he found that out, he said, we're going to delete the front legs of Smaug. And this is actually a fun discontinuity between the version of the first Hobbit movie that came out in cinema versus when you got it on DVD. You can actually see the wing difference. It's inside the special features of the first DVD if you're curious enough. I just find this really interesting. And to be clear, this isn't the first depiction of these dragons turning into what these, internet fans call wyverns. Instead of front legs just being front legs, the wings are kind of connected to the front legs in like this weird crawling kind of motion thing. And it's actually specifically designed since, there's no lizard that actually has wings. They don't function that way. Words. Surprisingly difficult to talk when you're trying to mix cookie dough. All that to say is that this gets apparently the very strongly, zealous dragon community. They care so much about dragons being correct anatomically, and this is a fake animal, that making that decision to get rid of the front legs for, I think, a completely viable theatrical decision. Apparently that's just a cardinal sin for these dragon people. Second point, as to why I think it's just a little bit silly. When I was talking about that, the Rest is History podcast, one of the interesting points that they came up with this. Another name for dragon, and you can find this in The Hobbit when you read it, is worm, spelt W-Y-R-M. That kind of worm, right? Now, when you change a couple letters over a little bit, what you'll wind up be getting is wyvern pretty quickly. W-Y-V-R-N. Now, when I look at this, they look really similar, almost like an evolution of one of the other. I think that linguistically, one came directly from the other. Now, do I know how this happened initially? Not really. Maybe it was a decision from some author to make this new breed of dragon, or maybe we kind of just naturally turned it into that kind of thing, and who cares? You know what? Acceptable. Fun hint. I tend to find that when cookie dough is actually finished, you should be able to stir it and not get too much of the dough on the side of the bowl like that. Don't know if you can see it. Look at that. Almost clean. Good sign. Putting things away because it's good to do that. How the word worm kind of naturally would imply that the word wyvern would come out of it. They seem intrinsically connected by the way that they're spelled. So my thought, what if we go a bit Darwin? If we go full on Darwin here, my thought process is, well, what if they're actually intrinsically correlated animals? What if they're so closely correlated that we decided to come up with different names for these animal character things, and they don't really need to? For example, right? We know of the difference between something like an emperor penguin and one of those little short penguins, whatever they're called. I call them the feathery guys. My thought process is, we can distinguish between the two as much as we want. They're both penguins. I don't think it really matters that much. And sure, we can tell that there are differences. Are the differences all that important? Do the differences between a wyvern and a dragon justify having such a large, wide-scale debate about the anatomy, words, about the anatomy between both of these very closely related lizard-looking things? Is that somehow important to the narrative? For the most cases, no. However, in some media, and I'm going to talk about this, I might talk about this with the book for next week, in some cases this does matter, and I think that that's interesting. And I think that ultimately, this kind of winds up being a case of, well, case-by-case basis. And I feel like that's a really boring answer, but at the same time, I think it's also pretty justified there. If there's a narrative reason why there needs to be two different breeds of dragon, then I think this is totally fair and justified. But for the most part, I just don't think that this is really important enough. And I think that's kind of where I'm gonna end it there. I'm almost finished making these cookies. Are dragons and wyverns different enough to warrant a debate wholesale? I think it just depends on the author and what they need the narrative to be. And that's probably going to be an answer that's going to really annoy some of these scalies online. I get that. But I also think it's just intrinsically true. Dragons are fictional. Unless you count the Komodo, but that one's kind of lame. It can't fly. It can't breathe fire. Who cares? Dragons fulfill the purpose that the author kind of needs them to fulfill. Stanley talked about this, one of those questions where he always gets questions about who would win in a fight between Hulk and between Spider-Man, or questions like that all the time. And his answer to that was ultimately, it's whoever the author wants to win. The dragon question can kind of get in a similar area like that. What's the difference between a dragon and a wyvern? Whatever difference the author decides to make it. And that's it. Nothing else really matters. And I think if we leave it at that, then perhaps we can calm down this whole debate, which I didn't know existed, which I didn't need to know existed. Maybe we can calm this whole debate down a bit, because quite frankly, it's just a bit silly. But, hey, this is what I think about. Thank you for watching, and have a good whatever day it is. Cookies! Yum! Yummy!
They're majestic. Look at them. They're amazing.